You've come to the right place if you're looking to create, launch, and scale a high-value online training program. I'm your guide, Chris Badgett. I'm the co-founder of LifterLMS, the most powerful learning management system for WordPress. Stay to the end. I've got something special for you. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome back to another episode of LMS Cast. I'm joined by a very special guest. His name is Stephen Sauder. You can find him at Hustlefish. That's at hustlefish.com. But first, welcome to the show, Stephen.
Thanks. It's awesome to be here.
We're going to talk about Stephen's podcasts. We're going to talk about his work as an agency. We're going to talk about marketing and different ways to think about that. But let's start with your podcast, which is new as of this recording. It's about to come out. I'm going to be a guest on the show. It's called Through the Dip. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. We're just getting started. You can find it right now on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, wherever you listen to it. But all there is like a little 1 minute and 30-second intro. But if you head over there and you subscribe, you'll get notified the second we drop our first real episode, which Chris is going to be in the first batch of those.
Awesome. Well, a podcast is no small commitment. Tell us the story of Through the Dip, why you're starting it, what the angle is, who it's for, and let us know what it's all about.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've been around entrepreneurship pretty much my entire life. I worked for a lot of entrepreneurs, so people that were starting businesses for about 10, 15 years. Started with one guy who was working out of his kind of a one-car garage, and there's only 4 of us, and now I think they're up to like 80 people, and they have some international offices thrown in there. And so just being on that ride has always been a lot of fun. But about 7 years ago, I started my own business, and starting your own company is uniquely different to working for somebody else's. Even though you get to watch what it's like to start a company, when you're in that seat trying to make the decisions and trying to decide where the company should go, or how you should spend your money, or should you do A or should you do B? It's just a very different feeling and a very, very different seat to be sitting in. And while I've been working and building our marketing agency, we've been working on it for about 7 years now. And there was these moments where where growth kind of stalls out, and the goals that you set, you start slipping, and all of a sudden, like these big, brilliant dreams that you had start slipping away just a little bit because life hits. And whether it's like the economy going up and down, whether it's some other force in the industry, whether it's personal life stuff, and all of a sudden, every once in a while, you find yourself in this dip and things will start going down. You have to start making some tough decisions around, where were you going to spend your money? Who were you going to pay? All these kind of big questions that aren't necessarily easy to answer. And there's not a cut and dry answer. It's not like this is right and this is wrong. And you're sitting there and you're kind of having to hold all of those things and try to figure out and navigate your way through the dip. And as an agency, we just kind of went through a dip about a year ago. And I feel like some of the lessons that I learned going through those dip was some of the most important lessons that I've learned. And I don't think that I could have learned them any other way. And so in going through that, all of a sudden I had this curiosity to talk to other people that have navigated their companies, their businesses through a dip. And what lessons did they learn? What was it like? How did they make those tough decisions? And especially when you have the moment to look back a little bit and reflect on those decisions. Like answering those questions of what would have you told yourself, or what advices would you give yourself, or even like, I think more interestingly, like, would you do it again? Like, is the pain of going through that dip worth it? So that's kind of where the idea of the podcast Through the Dip came from, is to connect with other entrepreneurs and just kind of learn about their lessons of navigating a business and making some of those tough calls and tough choices.
I love that. There's a lot of content on the internet about success and, winning and what I would call survivorship bias. but what about the hard times? So,
Yeah.
and surviving that and figuring all that out and helping others with that. It's a really noble podcast. I look forward to being a serial listener to it. 'Cause I love learning from other people's stories. Tell us about one of your dips from about a year ago in your agency or whatever was going on there.
Yeah, we had some really ambitious growth plans, and we had a what I thought at the time was a really good plan to do it. I still don't think the plan is necessarily bad, but we put a lot of eggs in a single basket. And so what we decided to do was we were going to try to double our agency over the next 12 months. And what we wanted to do was go out and hire sales people or account executives, if you will, like that's what we kind of call them in the agency world. Uh, in different local markets, um, cities that had about somewhere between 150,000 people more or greater up to about a 500,000 people was kind of the largest that we were looking at. And have them get really plugged into their local community and sell our marketing services to other business owners. And the premise behind that was that marketing is such a relationship business that it's really hard to run ads around it. It's really hard to convince people to buy your product without having some sort of relationship because you're asking them to put up money and you're going to take that money and go spend it to make more money and then give that money back to them, right? It's almost like kind of like the financial advisor kind of world, also a very relationship driven world where it takes a lot of trust to kick something off. Um, so that was our plan to grow. So we hired 3 different account executives in different locations. We hired team around it so we could handle the increase flow. And we spent a lot of money on software so that we would be in a good place to be organized and streamlined and efficient as we started growing. But the problem is that the sales never materialized the way that we thought they were. That what we thought people could do um, just kind of fell flat. And I think there's a multitude of reasons for that. Like whether it was the right person, or maybe we were selling or trying to sell the wrong thing, or maybe we didn't have our services quite packaged up as well as they could, or build as much marketing around it as we should have. Um, I think all of those things played a little part in why it didn't scale the way that we wanted it to scale. Um, but ultimately, what that resulted in was our overhead was incredibly high. We were just like burning through cash to have all these people a part of our team. And then this question comes up is like, how long do you burn through cash with the hopes of hitting that sales goal that you have? Like, how hard do you push to meet that goal? And at what point in time do you have to just pull the plug and take a loss on it and just say, you know what? This isn't panning out the way that we expected it to work. And we got to stop the bleeding somewhere, and we got to downsize, and we got to scale back to what we could do so we can live to fight another day. Um, and so ultimately at the kind of the beginning part of this year, we made the decision that, you know what, the numbers just are not looking good. And there's no way you could look at the numbers and reasonably assume that things were going to change in the next 3 months. So unfortunately, we had to go and do some layoffs and let go of some great people on our team, like people that I wish we could have kept. But there's just no way to keep someone if you don't have the sales to support that salary, and um, it's just not sustainable. And so we ultimately had to let some people go, which was really disappointing. But now we've been able to kind of right side that ship, and we're still growing, just not as fast as I initially wanted to or initially had planned. Um, but it's amazing to just like looking at myself, like like my attitude or what I was feeling in the moments when things weren't going as well and the moments where things are going better now, and like the level of anxiety and how I was trying to deal with that and working harder and longer hours, but like that not seeing that payoff just gets really discouraging. And all of a sudden, like just my energy level, like, just felt like I just gave everything I could, but there was no more to give. And you're not sleeping at night because you're trying to figure out, maybe if I did this, maybe if I did that, maybe I could, get this deal to work out. Um, I think there's something to be said about um, pushing and fighting hard for something, but also not pushing too hard for something that you're trying to create to happen, right? Like either things are going to kind of happen and grow with you, or else you're fighting against everything tooth and nail. And maybe that the world's trying to tell you something else. Like maybe you're going down a wrong path there, or you're fighting a battle that's a little too hard to fight.
So if you could go back in time and talk, excuse me, to your previous self when you were considering building a sales team, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to your previous entrepreneur self getting ready to hire all these account
Yeah.
executives?
I'd probably tell myself to go slower and to test things out more before doubling down. I think it's really easy to have this mindset, at least for me, that like time isn't on your side. Like I only have so many years here in this world. I only have so many like so much money that I can make or how big can I get this, right? Like I want to try to grow this company to be as big as it can get and I only have so many years to do it. So let's go fast. Um but I think that's a really dangerous mindset because it kinda gets you into, like, you referenced this earlier about people broadcasting this idea of success, right? Like 10Xing everything, or how do you like, this idea of, like, viral growth, versus this idea of just, like, sustainable growth. Like, virality is inherently not sustainable. If you look at viral marketing campaigns, usually it is something that, like, moves forward incredibly fast, but it doesn't have a long lifespan. Like, very rarely does a viral thing have any sort of legs that carries it for years. It carries it for a moment, and it's cool for that moment. But um, I think approaching life where you're not fighting against time and you're not fighting against scale, and you're growing at something that is you're looking at more as like sustainability, I guess, in growth, and how can you hit the next milestone without risking everything? Um, there's too much. There's too much. I think weight that or I'm not sure what the right word to use, but, like, uh, people lift up people who, hit the home runs all the time, right? But it's not the home run hitters that carry a baseball game and win the championship. Like, they're a part of it, but, like, the people that could just show up and have a good batting average and just do get a couple singles, maybe a double here or there, like, that's how you move the chain, that's how you move the bases. That's how you score, in football and baseball, and, like, this is the truth of sports, and it's the truth of business too, but everybody wants that Hail Mary pass or that home run hit, and it's easy to fall into that trap.
So for context, what's on offer at Hustlefish? Like, what does the marketing agency offer? What kinds of services?
Yeah, so, we are a digital agency, so we do, like, paid media, so, like, PPC, like Google, Meta, TikTok, um, like Instagram, Facebook, right? Um, like all like the ad stuff. We do SEO and then we build a lot of websites and do some branding stuff around that. So essentially someone comes to us asking like, "Hey, how can I sell more of my thing?" And then we look at that and figure out kind of what levers need to get pulled to scale your business or to sell more. And in working with a lot of clients, our best clients are the ones that have realistic uh, growth models that are slow and make sense. And I've seen this 100 times. The people that come in that say like, I want to, you know, become 5 times bigger and here's this tiny budget, but like if we do it right, we can get there. It's like it doesn't work out 99.9999% of the time. But somehow I fell into that trap too. Like I was just like, "Oh man, I think we can do it. I think if we make all the right decisions, right, we can pull this off." But, service wise, like generally when a client comes to us, we look at 3 things. We look at, 1, do they need more traffic coming into their site? Like, do they just need more exposure? 2, do they need a higher conversion rate? um, to get whatever they want done. Or do you need to work on profitability and more of just business model type stuff? Generally, when someone's talking about growth and scaling, their problem or the thing that they're trying to fix or the thing that they're trying to propel forward falls into one of those three areas. And so we'll help out with the first two. If it's a little bit larger on the business model side, we'll usually have some conversations around what they could do differently. But ultimately, they're the ones that have to fix it. But when people are coming to us looking for growth, those are kind of like the three areas that all of our services kind of plug into.
So we ask this question a lot on this podcast, but particularly for the agency folks out there. You tried outbound sales with sales team, but what is over the years actually working in to answer the question how to get clients? Like what's the
Yeah.
mix? How do you get clients?
I think it is for a marketing agency, it's all about relationships and like building those relationships with people. And um it's hard to hack relationships. You can't fake it. You got to log the hours, you got to log the time and be there and help people out wherever you can help them out. And so I think some agencies have figured out ways to scale via like outbound type stuff, although I'm always a little dubious about the numbers that they've projected out there just because all the agency owners that I know and talking to them um and their numbers and what sales is looking like for them um it's it's almost always comes down to who they know and the relationships that they've built over time.
So how long has Hustle Fish been going?
So we Hustlefish is about 7 years old now, but for a long time, it was kind of just like a side hustle sort of thing.
Mhm.
And so in reality, it's been like more 4 years where it's been a real business with like employees and like a full-time commitment for me versus, working a second job or something like that.
How much of the business comes from referrals from existing clients?
I would say maybe 40 to 30% of it comes from, like, referrals where we don't know the person at all. Um, and th and okay, and or we know the person that referred them, but we don't know the referred person that comes and talks to us. Um, but we usually have a good idea of how that relationship got connected back to us, and the rest of it's, like, very one-to-one sort of relationships where, like, um, we know the person on a more personal level than just a random business sitting out there in the middle of nowhere.
How much has local played an aspect in your agency, like in the immediate area where you live versus the wide internet?
Yeah, a local is 100% where everything comes from. I
Okay.
don't think there I don't think we could trace any of our customers back to a purely digital relationship where like there was no geographic sort of point. We did this really interesting test about 2 years ago where we did a bunch of cold emails, reaching out to other agency owners saying, "Hey, like, if you have like, you're really great at, creative copywriting, um, but we can help build websites for you." Uh, we got some really great clients all inside of the state that we were in, so Indiana. Once you sent to somebody across the state line, it was pretty much crickets. Like, we got some conversations, but, like, the sale never closed or it wasn't a great client. Um, there's something I think really important about geographic region and the amount of weight and trust that people put into knowing that you are there. Like, there's people that I, didn't meet in person, for a long time that I chatted with because we were in the same geographic state. Like, that's the only commonality, and the only reason why they said yes to talk to me, right? And that's where, like, the relationship started. Um, but if I would have emailed somebody all the way across state lines to somewhere else, I think it would be way, way harder. I think the one thing that's interesting about this though is I've had the exact opposite experience in the WordPress community. The WordPress community like has this has no idea of geographic location. It has everything to do with like the love for WordPress or the commonality of using that tool set or that technology. And so I think there's something really cool that WordPress has been able to do that many other industries have really, really struggled to do.
In your offer stack, you do some WordPress stuff, but you also do things like paid ads and SEO, which doesn't necessarily have to be WordPress based. Um, how do you think about the stack of what the tools you work with and um, using things outside of WordPress? As an example, some agencies are like super focused on WordPress and everything is just related to the WordPress site, but like running paid ads is very different, and those are different platforms with different rules and that kind of thing. How do you think about focusing an agency on like one piece of the stack versus providing more of the portfolio of solution that you do?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I think well, we started off just doing development stuff, and that's pretty much all we did. But you build somebody a website, and then all of a sudden, either A, they need to get better conversion rates out of their users, which is a little more dev centric, but still pretty firmly based in like this idea of like messaging and how do you say something and but then also like if you also need to get traffic to that site. And so a lot of people have great ideas, but then just don't have the execution to generate the traffic around it. And so we would build these awesome sites and they would just kind of sit out there. And we wanted to get a lot more involved with how do we get these sites to do the thing that they're supposed to do. So drive traffic and drive conversions. And mm, to do that, we kind of just started working our way back up that. Like we started out with SEO first because it's kind of the closest to development maybe, and then added paid ads onto that, added conversion rate optimization onto that, and then as you add those services and then also you start having people that are coming in with different technologies, right? Like they're using Shopify instead of WooCommerce, or they need a custom app built because they're doing something crazy custom that no one else is doing. And so all of a sudden we started working in a bunch of different platforms and a lot of different services. And it became more about what is the ultimate goal and what are the best tools to use to hit that goal versus this is our little niche or stack that we're playing in.
I love that. What's a counterintuitive insight that you've kind of figured out with working with paid ads over time that's not as obvious?
Oh, that's a good question. A counterintuitive. Um, I think the more hyper specific you can get with ads, the more interesting they become. And a common way to do that is to go down this route of like, how do I resonate with my person's needs the most? Um, I think a more interesting way to do that is how do I throw up a face that somebody recognizes? Or how do I have somebody that is in their world talking to them? So, like, for instance, we've been doing a lot of thinking about podcasts and like how to grow this podcast, right? And an interesting way to do that would be to say, all right, like when we do our podcast, I could take our podcast, chop it up into a bunch of little like ad snippets, and throw it on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook or whatever, um, and market to people who are in the WordPress space and who are into courses and teaching people how to do things, right? And the chances that they would know you and recognize your face is insanely high. And so, like, I could run an ad instead of saying, I'm going to run an ad to people who are in this industry. I say, how do I talk to somebody in this industry, right? And then funnel them to my podcast, right? That would be like a very interesting sort of way of doing it. If you're thinking about it from a local standpoint, like who locally do people know? So like I think an interesting thing is like a lot of or some colleges have a kind of connection between like the college marketing department and other companies and kind of like will do cross promotions with like their players and other companies and stuff. And so like you could take a basketball team, right, and have them come to your restaurant, right? And you could run ads with the basketball team at your restaurant. So all of a sudden now your ad isn't, hey, do you want uh pizza or whatever? It's, hey, check out where the basketball team hangs out. Like you love your college's basketball team, you should hang out here. And so you're kind of not you're not approaching it from a need standpoint. You're and having people resonate with a need. You're having people resonate with a person, which has a lot more deep personal, like emotional ideas behind it, that I think you can connect with people in a more real sort of way because it's person to person, or it's moving it closer to person to person. So I don't know. I think for my like a counterintuitive ad sort of thing, I think that's an interesting way to like start looking at ads, is not just saying how do I write the best copy or say the thing that resonates with people. How do you get the person that already resonates with that person to say the thing? It's a little bit similar to like influencer marketing, but done in a more like local way that someone who wouldn't call themselves an influencer marketer um, would engage with that or something like that.
That's awesome. In our pre-chat and related to what you just said, you've mentioned marketing with heart. So like going more for the heart than the need or some logical argument. Tell us more about what you see out in the world as the possibility of marketing more with heart.
Yeah. I think there's things that people resonate with more than solving a problem or making money or doing whatever. So, like, um, if you're creating a course for somebody, right? Um, I was talking to this person about they have this they teach people how to play the ukulele and do bluegrass jams. So you could market that in two different ways. You could go to somebody and you could say, "Want to learn the ukulele? I can teach you how to play the ukulele." Or you could say, "Want to learn how to play the ukulele and jam with friends, or want to learn how to jam with friends? I will show you how to jam with friends or be a part of a jam session." And I've seen signs up and I've seen people doing jam sessions in parks and stuff, and I've always been like, "Oh, that'd be cool to be able to join them." I have no idea how to be a part of a jam session. I can play the guitar a little bit. I've never jammed with people though. So like that's a very foreign concept to me. But all of a sudden, like you're taking this idea of learning an instrument, but putting it with people and putting it in context of society and a social sort of element around it. And I think that touches a lot closer than this need of, oh, I need to learn how to play the ukulele. No, I need to learn how to play the ukulele so I can jam with people. And that moves it way closer to, you could say, like a need or want in somebody's heart, but it's more tangential than what your product or service is offering, but it actually like connects more with people and with people's hearts, because I think relationships and doing life with other people is such a huge part of emotion and life in general. There's an improv comedy club right down the road, and they do improv lessons. They get some people who just want to learn improv, but almost all of their marketing stuff is like, you want to make friends? Like improv class is the way to do it. And you have this huge group of people that I don't think would ever take improv, but they're like, I want to know how to connect with people better. And I see that link between improv and connecting with people. So I'm gonna go sign up. I'm gonna go sign up for that class. They've taken their product and services and not just like, oh, I'm teaching you how to do that, and they made it something bigger. They made it into a community, and they have a lot of other things that go around that like reinforce that idea over and over again. But I think that gets you closer to what people love and what people care about. The closer you can get to that, and not just, oh, here's the list of the problems that I solve. I'll teach you to do X, like play the guitar, or here's an app that solves Y. Like I think like what you're doing with like Lifter is really cool. Like, uh, yeah, here's a plugin that you can post courses. Awesome, that's a need solved. But if you can say like, no, here's how you create a community, and here's how you create a course so that people are engaged with you, and this is how you build this whole thing around this idea that you have. Like that was way more compelling than just like a plugin that solves a problem. And things like LMS cast and like podcasting and the stuff that you do at like showing up at word camps and stuff like that, I think connect that all together. And it's like, no, it's not just a plugin for sale. It's something larger here. There's something bigger than just solving the problem of how do you do courses on WordPress.
That's awesome. And yeah, it is something bigger, which I'm sure we'll talk about in our interview. So if you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube, write down or go look for Through the Dip. Um, there was a great guest on this show. His name was Dane Maxwell. I think he lives in Indiana or Illinois.
Okay.
Um, he wrote a book called Start from Zero, and he had this framework of sort of for really any business, but the whole thing was customer result mechanism. And he said one of the biggest problems with businesses is that people get really focused on their mechanism, like running ads or stand up comedy or playing an instrument. That's just the mechanism. And we all know this as marketers, is that people buy what they really want as a result. But often when we're selling a service or a product, we over focus on the mechanism. And he had a word for that, mechanism first thinking. And
Mhm.
when you look at results and kind of broaden out from just like, oh, people who want to use my mechanism, that's not really a target market. That's not really a clear result. But things like make friends, discover community, um, even community respect is like a something kind of under the iceberg of conscious awareness. Like if sometimes people buy a product because they're looking for more respect from their community.
Yeah.
It's like a
Yeah.
motivating factor.
I
Um,
think I think what's interesting is that what I've found is people that focus on the mechanism. This isn't like a blanket statement, but like I think there's this tendency or this trend that like if you focus on the mechanism, it's often because you don't understand or you don't know the heart component of that first. Like you have set out to solve a problem to whatever, to just solve that problem, right? Like you are like let's take like LifterLMS for example. If you were a person that was like, I'm going to build a plugin to sell. What should I build? I think there's a market gap in learning management systems on WordPress. All right, we are going to build that plugin and we are going to put all the features in it and we're going to solve all our customer stuff. The end. Um, it's really, really hard to move out of the mechanism sort of place and get into something deeper because it has to almost flow from something deeper inside of you as the founder and the creator of this thing. Like it has to start at a level that you actually care about this thing for something larger than just solving the problem. Um, and what I've talked to I don't know if this is good advice or bad advice, so take it with a grain of salt. But like, I almost think that if you find yourself working on a product and it's just all about the mechanism, it it is better to take a step back and say, "Is this the product that I should be working on right now? Or is there a product that I could be working on that I truly care about?" Right? I truly care about bluegrass music, and I would love to figure out how to get more people involved in that. And so now I'm solving this problem to do it. Or I truly care about this idea of businesses going through the dip and like it's not lonely, it's not terrible. You learn some of the best things. You shouldn't try to avoid the dip at all costs possible. Like sometimes going through it is the only way you're going to get to where you want to go. And so how do we celebrate the hard times and the lessons that we learned and the hard won truths? Um, and there's something like deeply meaningful about that for me that like is propelling me forward to do this podcast versus just like, oh, there's a space. I want to do a podcast. What could I do a podcast about? I think it should be X, Y, or Z, and let's just do it. So if you find yourself focused on the mechanism, I think it's really hard to shift and start focusing on the other. I forget the other two triangle things that you said, but like it's probably hard to shift and focus on those unless you actually care about it deeper than the problem.
yeah, I love that. And the other two were clear customer and result. So like actually having a specific avatar and the result, which has the result has many layers. And I think what
Yeah.
you're tapping into is, yeah, they may want to get in better shape by signing up for the gym, but underneath all that, they may want to, you know, quote, look good naked or, be more attractive to the opposite, to whoever they're going after or whatever. And there's like all this stuff below the surface. And the closer you get to that, the stronger your marketing is.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're, I think that it is the avatar thing is hard to create a good avatar if you don't truly care about that avatar to begin with.
Right.
Um, is I don't know. If you look around examples, like I don't know if you're familiar with Beehive, like the newsletter software.
Yeah.
But the guys that created that, right? They created Morning Brew, and they lived and breathed emails, and they know what they're doing, and the stuff that they're launching is just like incredibly smart compared to like all the other newsletter stuff that I've uh, engaged with. And you get this feeling that it's coming from this very personal place of like, I did this thing and it was hard, and my goal is to make this thing easy for everybody. Like I've been there, and there's this way that they resonate with their audience that I haven't seen come from a lot of um, other tools. There's others out there that are similar, but it's, I don't know, it's interesting.
And just a cheat code for that, some of the most successful people I see with like courses and coaching programs and building communities and stuff, their customer avatar is really just helping a previous version of themselves.
Yeah.
So number one, you know your own story and your own past pain points and everything. So instead of going and trying to find an opportunity in the market, look in the rearview mirror of your life and look around and see other people at that spot currently. And it's sort of a cheat code because one, you understand it, two, you can identify that person and help find them. But yeah, just a tip
Well,
there.
I think then three, like I think all of us looking back at our future selves or our past selves that were struggling with something, like you just want to like give that person a hug and be like, man, you're gonna figure it out. It's gonna be okay. And here's how, and here's why, and here's there's something that connects your soul back to that person. And by being because you have that connection, I think you can create this stuff that just resonates with that person so much deeper without having to like try to come up with some weird cliche avatar to try to like fake it or something like that.
And that's why Steven's starting the Through the Dip podcast. So go check that out. He's been through dips and he knows other people who've been through, and he's curating and looking to help entrepreneurs as they navigate the dips. So that's a search for Through the Dip podcast. You can also find Steven at hustlefish.com. Is there anywhere else people can connect with you, Steven?
No, yeah, those two places, throughthedip.com. You can sign up with your email address right there, and you'll get notified when we're launching our episodes.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on the show, Steven. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Really appreciate the time.
And that's a wrap for this episode of LMS Cast. Did you enjoy that episode? Tell your friends and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And I've got a gift for you over at LifterLMS.com/gift. Go to LifterLMS.com/gift. Keep learning, keep taking action, and I'll see you in the next episode.